This first story is sure to get people talking. Whyte, Ortiz doesn't want to fight me. Asked for silly money. He was quoted as saying, "In my last 2 fights, I fought 2 former world champions. Yet Wilder bleats that I have to fight Ortiz to be second place mandatory."
Second?
Whyte told Sky Sports for a story posted Thursday to the network's website. Who's Ortiz's best win? A dreadful points win over Malik Scott, who Chisora knocked out?
Guy makes a good point.
He sure did.
I offered to fight Ortiz years ago, but he didn't want to know, Whyte said. He didn't even want to know this summer and asked for silly money, coming off his knockout loss to Wilder. And he made it clear that he wouldn't be ready for July 28th, which was the date we had available. Funnily enough, it didn't stop him from fighting someone else on that day. London's Whyte fought former WBO champion Joseph Parker on July 28th after dropping Parker twice. Whyte survived the 12th round knockdown to top Parker by unanimous decision at the O2 Arena in London. That same night, Cuba's Ortiz knocked out Razvan Kojanu in the 2nd round at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Wilder wants me to jump through more hoops that he dictates before I can fight him, Whyte said. Yet he fought a journeyman, Jason Gavern, immediately before he fought for the world title. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of this conversation, let me preface that with this. The fight that I want to see is Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua.
Damn right.
That is the fight at the top of my list of fights in the heavyweight division that I want to see. So don't take this commentary as me saying that I feel a Dillian Whyte fight should come before that fight. The fight that I want to see is Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. That being said, you have to put yourself in Dillian Whyte's shoes.
You have to.
If you're gonna be fair and you're gonna call it down the middle, if you're not a shill, if you're not some fanboy faggot motherfucker that just agrees with whatever one guy says, if you're actually trying to call it down the middle and call a spade, you've got to put yourself in Dillian Whyte's shoes.
Okay.
If you're Dillian Whyte, that would mean that you're coming off of 8 consecutive victories in a row. You've ever only lost 1 fight, and that was 8 fights ago.
8.
In your last fight, you fought a former champion. In the fight before that, you gave an undefeated fighter his first professional loss. This is a guy that used to hold a version of a world title, Lucas Brown. If you're Dillian Whyte,
You did the legwork.
and you're looking at what the WBC is saying and what Deontay Wilder is saying, it will appear as if they want you to jump through a lot of hoops that a lot of other motherfuckers ain't got to jump through. You explain it. How is it possible that Dominic Breazeale ends up with the first mandatory spot, and this is a guy that's only won 2 fights since losing to Anthony Joshua? He beats his Wagbe Ugono, who wasn't in the top 10, and then he beats Eric Molina.
Okay.
That gets you a title shot? What about beating Joseph Parker, who used to be the WBO champion? What about giving Lucas Brown his first professional loss? What about coming off of 8 consecutive victories,
8?
Climbing up the ranks steadily?
No hiccups.
A steady trend of success. That doesn't get you a title shot. But beating Eric Molina and Izu does?
What the fuck?
Obviously, there's something wrong there.
You think?
Now, this is something that I've talked about in many videos in the past, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, because a lot of you guys already know how I feel about that. I feel that there are other forces at work shielding Dillian Whyte from Deontay Wilder. Does that mean that I think Dillian Whyte beats Deontay Wilder? No, I don't. I would pick Wilder to win that fight, I would. However, that still doesn't change that there appear to be forces that are keeping Dillian Whyte away from Deontay Wilder. That they're using other fighters to shield Deontay Wilder. Understand that if Dillian Whyte would have took Wilder up on his challenge to face Luis Ortiz, that still wouldn't get him a title shot.
Why not?
He would only be the 2nd mandatory even if he won that fight. Breazeale would be the first. I mean, ask yourselves a question. Do you guys think that Dominic Breazeale has really earned a title shot? He's not even ranked at number 1 right now. You know who's ranked at number 1 right now? Dylan Whyte. So explain it. How in God's green earth does that make sense? That the number 1 contender has to jump through yet another hoop.
But number 4 doesn't?
When he's already seated at number 1 and has been seated at number 1 for some time now. I mean, what's the fucking point in having ranks in numerical order when the number 1 contender is the second mandatory? No, wait, backtrack. He doesn't become the second mandatory until after he beats a guy that's ranked beneath him. And the guy who actually has the title shot, Dominic Breazeale, he sits at number fucking 4.
Beneath them.
I mean, seriously, what is the point in numerical ranks when number 4 gets the shot, but number 1 doesn't? And never mind explaining how Tyson Fury ends up getting a title shot. Think about it. The WBC says that Deontay Wilder has to face Dominic Breazeale, even though it hasn't even been 12 months since his last mandatory. But they say that he's got to face Dominic Breazeale. And they tell Dylan Whyte, hey, you've got to fight Luis Ortiz, and that'll get you the second mandatory spot. Yet in comes Tyson Fury, and he is fast-tracked to a title shot ahead of all of them. And the question then becomes, okay, look, we know what Tyson Fury did in the past, but what has he done in recent memory that you fast-track him to a title shot and the WBC doesn't say boo? When it's Dylan Whyte, the WBC's got something to say, but when it's Tyson Fury, they don't? What I'm getting at here is, look, you can feel how you want to feel about the fight. You know, if you tell me that you've got Deontay Wilder knocking out Dylan Whyte, I would agree with you, because I feel that Dylan Whyte is far too aggressive and he's going to get himself clipped. If those guys were to ever actually fight, I'd pick Deontay Wilder to win that fight. But we're not talking about forecasting a fight. We're not talking about predicting an outcome. What we're talking about are the double standards associated with the WBC and how they have been using other fighters to shield Deontay Wilder. And he's not the only guy that they do this with. They're also doing this with Canelo. They're using Triple G to shield him from Jermall Charlo. Now, let's not stray too far from the point. Let's not stray too far from what we're actually talking about. The WBC is using fighters in the heavyweight division to shield Deontay Wilder so that he's free to fight whoever the fuck he feels like fighting. That's saying that if Deontay Wilder didn't fight Dylan Whyte, it's simply because he didn't fucking want to. It's not because he had to fight Dominic Breazeale because he hasn't fought him yet, right?
No.
It's not because the WBC would threaten to strip him if he fought someone other than Dominic Breazeale.
No.
Because here he is fighting Tyson Fury. So if Deontay Wilder turned down a career high payday for Dylan Whyte, how many millions of dollars did they offer him for little old Dylan Whyte? Little old Dylan Whyte, who Deontay Wilder's fans will say is a tomato can.
Easy work.
He's a crash test dummy. Okay, you turned down that amount of money, that amount of millions, an amount of money that you've never made.
And still haven't.
You turned that down.
For what exactly?
And all you were gonna have to deal with was a crash test dummy? No, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Then what does?
And what I'm getting at here is, look.
He was free to fight.
Deontay Wilder, if he didn't fight Dylan Whyte, it's not because he had to fight Dominic Breazeale first, because you know what? He hasn't fought him yet. Here he is engaging in another fight with Tyson Fury, who's not his first mandatory or his second.
None of those.
And the WBC's not getting in the way of that, right? You don't see the WBC threatening to strip him for fighting Tyson Fury. Essentially, they're letting him fight whoever the fuck he feels like fighting. So if he didn't fight Dylan Whyte, it's because he didn't feel like it. Not because he couldn't, but because he didn't feel like it.
Why not?
Because all Tyson Fury has done since gearing his comeback is Safer Safari and Francesco Pianetta. Two guys that are not in the top 10 anywhere.
But he's got a shot.
Yet somehow that's enough that, it's okay for him to get a title shot. It's not okay for Dylan Whyte, but it's okay for Tyson Fury to get the shot.
Why is that?
If you're gonna call a spade, if you're gonna tell the truth, if you're gonna call it down the middle, then you have to highlight all these inconsistencies because they don't make sense. Before the story was, Deontay Wilder can't fight Dylan Whyte because Dominic Breazeale's is mandatory. But he's not even fighting his fucking mandatory.
Is he?
So if he didn't fight Dylan Whyte, if he turned down that career high payday, it's because he didn't want that fight. Not because he couldn't have that fight, it's just that he didn't want it. And you can make certain inferences as to why. I'll leave those judgments up to you. But one thing is clear as day. And it's that if Deontay Wilder didn't fight Dylan Whyte, it's because he didn't want to, not because he couldn't. He could have. if he wanted to. Lord knows that Dillian Whyte's been chasing him since before this Tyson Fury fight even became a thing. Since before Tyson Fury even decided to gear his comeback. Dillian Whyte has been hot on Deontay Wilder's trail before Tyson Fury even stepped back into the picture. So you can't even use that as an excuse.
Now, in the case of Dillian Whyte and Luis Ortiz, obviously you've heard that Dillian Whyte had some choice words for Ortiz. Essentially, what Dillian Whyte is saying is that they could have fought in July.
On the 28th.
But Luis Ortiz priced himself out. Now, this situation between Whyte and Ortiz, it's a very similar situation to the Deontay Wilder fight in the sense that, look, if they ever met in the ring, I'd pick Luis Ortiz to beat Dillian Whyte. But the fact still remains that if these guys didn't fight, you really have to look at both sides of the story. You can't just keep telling yourself the same thing based on what one guy said. You've got to look at both sides. And if the story checks out, if it is indeed true that Luis Ortiz told them, well, he wouldn't be ready to fight
on the 28th,
Dillian Whyte in that time frame, but he turned around and fought a lesser opponent, a lesser caliber of fighter, a guy from the lower, even lower in the ranks, Razvan Kojanu. If that's the case, then what the fuck would you call that? What would you call that when you say you're not ready for Dillian Whyte in July, but you're ready for Razvan Kojanu? What would you call that? Now, me being me, because I'm unbiased, this is only one side of the story. This is Dillian Whyte's end of the story. We don't know what dollar amount Luis Ortiz asked for. Dillian Whyte is saying that he asked for silly money. Dillian Whyte is saying that Luis Ortiz priced himself out. But we really don't know in what way did he price himself out. What kind of money did he ask for? We don't have that side of the story. Maybe it wasn't a lot. Maybe he just wanted reasonable compensation for facing a top contender so soon after a crushing loss. It could be that way. I'm gonna look at both sides of the spectrum. But up until that point, what we know is that Dillian Whyte is saying, hey, this guy said he wouldn't be ready for me, but apparently he was ready for Razvan Kojanu, so what do you call that?
Come on, fellas, what do you call that?
That's Dillian Whyte's end of it. And until we hear Luis Ortiz's end of it, we're really not going to know the truth. We've only got one version of the story. But I will say this much, and this is just my opinion, feel free to disagree. I don't think it's necessary for Dillian Whyte to have to face Luis Ortiz to get a title shot. He's done more than enough to get a title shot. If I'm Dillian Whyte, if I'm sitting in that guy's shoes, I'm not jumping through any more hoops for the WBC. I'm not jumping through any more hoops for Deontay Wilder. If I'm Dillian Whyte, I tell those guys, hey, go fuck yourselves. You're protecting that guy. That's what you're doing. You're protecting that guy. You just want him to have his pick of the litter, so you keep putting these other guys in front of me. Because that's certainly what it looks like from where I'm sitting, and I'm not Dillian Whyte. Maybe Dillian Whyte shouldn't even be pursuing a title shot with that guy. Maybe he shouldn't. But if he doesn't, you know, people are going to be mad that he pursues a title shot with the only other champion in the division, Anthony Joshua. Dillian Whyte's critics don't want to see that fight any more than they want to see the Wilder fight, which begs the question, what the fuck would satisfy you motherfuckers anyway?
A dick in your ass.
But if Dillian Whyte continues to pursue the green belt, if he decides to continue to pursue Deontay Wilder, then maybe he should get Dominic Breazeale on the phone. And maybe he should get Eddie Hearn to incentivize the fight for Dominic Breazeale. Because you know what? He's not too happy either. He's another guy that got passed over. Oh yeah, WBC says he's the mandatory, but he still got passed over, didn't he? He got passed over by Tyson Fury. And I'm pretty sure he's not too happy about that either. So maybe Dillian Whyte and Dominic Breazeale should take a cue from Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So let our powers combine. There may be rumors circulating right now that Dillian Whyte might just face Derek Chisora again in a rematch for his next fight. There may be rumors about that, but even if Dillian was to win that rematch, that's not going to get you any closer to Deontay Wilder. But fighting and defeating Dominic Breazeale, that might just do the trick.